brought to you by Accenture Extended Reality. This is Field of View.
For this presentation, this ties in very nicely to a question that I have about what people call the metaverse, which is this utopia of having interconnected virtual reality worlds and virtual reality experiences together. It seems to me that as it is right now, the market of augmented and virtual reality are pretty much kind of a monopoly, with the augmented reality market being in the hands of monocular devices of Microsoft HoloLens when it comes only to industrial and to enterprise use cases, while the consumer world is a monopoly on its own way, because obviously right now it's dominated by Oculus, because they created this inexpensive and affordable device that provides a good enough experience for most of the people, while a lot of other competitors, even if they have some fantastic ad sets and projects, they're lagging back when it comes to market penetration. And even with Oculus, we have a very low market penetration at the moment. What do you think it needs to happen in order, first of all, to have this big bang moment of consumer adoption, and second, to enable these interconnected experiences between each other? Because I mean, we know that walled garden work well only for the company that are creating them. Do you think that an open source future of extended reality and VR is necessary in order to get the metaverse a reality?
Wow, that's there's a lot packed in that question.
Yeah, sorry.
Nick. I mean, but it's a great question. And let me start with saying that yes, we have compared to the world's population, we have a really small install base, and it's not going to happen overnight. But you know, this is what happened. It happened over and over again with other technologies that have come along. What we will see happening is that there are, of course, the early adopters. You know, we are sort of early adopters, right? And in that we have handsets and we understand the power of the technology and things like that. But it's not necessarily particularly recognized by others about what that this is really there. And so what we need, of course, is a leavening. You know, just like with leavening bread, you put in a little bit of yeast and it begins to grow. And meanwhile, during that time that we're going to see a growing of the base just by sheer interest and enthusiasm. And by the way, you know, you take 200 families around, I mean, 100 families around the world, and you start seeding that, then you're going to see these little things growing, you know, all around. And so there'll be an upward pressure or upward a pull, you know, that there is a need here. Meanwhile, enterprise takes over, and enterprise is going to sustain it now because AR and VR are really a transformative technology for them, for design, for education, HR type uses of it, and we're going to see the industry sustained in enterprise. Now, in a way, I mean, I might get shot for saying this. I think that Facebook has done us a real disservice by undercutting the other manufacturers, and they have a potential install base already, you know, of all their users, but their rules are draconian, and that has to change because we really do need to have this way that lets the metaverse evolve, and Web XR is going to do that. When we go to web-based platforms, you know, pretty much it's going to be kind of like the internet. You're going to have to follow a particular protocol in order to get it to work. HTML kind of thing that is going to be able to make it work in this metaverse space. And so that is coming along, and it's exciting to see that happen. One of the things that happened recently is that we just concluded end of May a partnership between the Virtual World Society and Educators in VR. We had this Univirtual Experience Conference. Now, this is a follow-on to the conference that was done in February of 2020, where you know this original international summit. I know you guys probably know about that, but what happened was this is before the lockdown of coronavirus, and just before the lockdown, and I was approached by the educators in VR, and I know these guys, and they said we'd like to hold this little conference about the application of VR in education. And I said that's a good idea. And they said, well, we wonder if you'd be our keynote speaker. And I said, well, sure, I'll be happy to help. And they said, well, that's wonderful. We're trying to invite maybe 20 speakers and maybe a 2-day event, and to see what interest is there and things like that. And I said, fantastic, go for it. Well, they didn't have 20 speakers. They had 175 speakers that came out of the woodwork. They had 110 events. It went over 6 days, 24 hours a day. People from every continent, including Antarctica, were represented there. People that never would get a chance to attend a conference like this because they couldn't afford it. And instead of generating 1.5 million pounds of carbon, we spent 150 pounds of carbon with the servers. Think about that. I met people I never would have met. It was a happening. It's like Woodstock. That's probably before your time, but this idea of a happening, it was there. People came out, and this is all in VR. This was not looking at screens. This was in VR. So, again, with partnership with educators in VR, the Virtual World Society, decided to do this again. How in the world are we going to suppress that? Surpass that? Well, we decided to make it 1 month long, and to do sort of 3 little blocks a day, one for Europe, one for US, one for Asia, and it just finished in end of May. We ended up having 8,000 people attend this, 500 events, 500 speakers, hundreds of events, 2 exhibit halls.
We also had a AIXR Insights panel there as well, which was really awesome.
Yes, you did. Yes, we did. And and so this changes everything in terms of what we're going to be doing in these international conferences. And so that these are all believers, and it's going to happen. It's changing. The Robert E. Staff Middle School project, our Virtual World Society, is doing right now. We have kids that are sixth grade, 12 years old, that are building virtual worlds to teach STEM subjects to other 6th graders. Their parents are involved in this. It's going to happen. Now, it's going to take a while to happen, certainly, but the metaverse is awaiting for us to do it, and it will be something like the VR internet that will let us have that experience. So I'm not concerned about the metaverse. What I am concerned about are the unknowns. One of the unknowns is we do not know the long-term longitudinal effects of spending a lot of time in VR every day. We don't know. Nobody's done it. And we won't know those things until a while from now. But one of the things that happens that the way we're building headsets today, there's one big problem with them, and that is the disconnect between the basically the binocular cues and the accommodative cues of the eye. Because we derive generally our feeling of 3 dimensions from 3 different mechanisms. One is stereographically, right? We have the 2 eyes that are separated, and that gives us, basically a feeling for distance. Now, that also comes with something else. Objects at various distances have different diversion of light coming from them. So that means that when you're looking in the distance and something is up close, it's out of focus, or vice versa. That you're looking at something up close and things in the distance are out of focus. That also is a mechanism that tells us 3-dimensionalness of the 3rd dimension of things. We are defeating that because all the pixels in our headsets are collimated to one distance, optical infinity. So even though things are up close, the eyes are saying individually. No, they're not. But stereographically, they are. That is a problem. Now, we don't notice it that much, but it's there. The other third way that we get 3D is from parallax, and that is being able to move your head. And so you get a distance of objects, how they move relative to each other as a function of moving your head around. So there are a number of the psychophysiology factors that we need to take into account as we're going forth with this technology. Another thing, of course, is that we're not even close to matching the capability of human vision. We have displays that have 100, maybe 100 to 120 degree instantaneous field of view. Some are going larger, but the human field of view goes out to 240 degrees. As a matter of fact, I have a grant from the National Science Foundation that's looking at what happens 180 degrees on back, because nobody really understands that functionality. That's part of what we perceive, but we don't necessarily bring into consciousness. But it does give us that feeling of being there. So there are some frontiers that we need to explore to make sure we're not going to do any harm with this technology in the long term. And then as far as the technology itself, let me tell you, it's going to change completely. We're not going to be wearing headsets in the end. It's nice as a convenience right now to wear headsets, but there's no reason why we will not have other ways of doing this. I'm working on some of those ideas myself.
You mentioned that the optical nerve is the best way to reach the brain because there's a high-speed, high-bandwidth connection that goes straight into our brain. So using imaging and visual technologies to provide information to the brain is a great way to do it. But obviously there are companies like Neuralink or eventually other companies, I don't know what's your company and your project that you're working on right now doing, that potentially could provide this kind of directly injected in-brain experience. Is this the future of XR?
Well, I don't think so in the short term. The best connector you have to the brain is an optical connector. It's called the retina of the eye.
Yeah.
Mother Nature has provided us an incredible connector. We just have to get the photons to those receptors. And there are various ways to do that aside from having to wear something, having to wear a device. I don't think, if we're talking about injection into the brain, direct injection to the optical cortex, occipital lobe, that's a long ways out of getting there. Now, so I believe that what we need to concentrate on is actually getting the photons to those receptors in novel and unique ways that do not require us to wear something that is least what we're having to wear today. At the same time, I think there's a whole lot of great work that can be done in acoustics, in providing the soundscape that goes to that. Yes, we had a lot of cool stuff in digital signal processing for sound and to to generate binaural sound. But yeah, we can do the display of binaural sound, but the actual synthesis of it from virtual worlds is still something that can require some work, the acoustic space that we want to create when we're in various environments. And then, of course,
it's also interesting when you talk about the sound stuff as well, because you even have like companies like Apple now who are, actually in their earpods, integrating beamforming, technology into that directly now to enable, AR environments for the future.
Yes, that's coming along, and I'm excited about that with Apple's announcement. And so that's work. When we're talking about AR, VR spaces, we need to have that kind of beamforming, that let us simulate the acoustics. And all of this will give us much greater sense of presence. We're really there. I mean, and our eyes are going to be trained for this. I mean, just like we once we got color television, we never wanted to go back to black and white. And when we get to the big screen television, we never want to go back to the small. It's all these kind of things. We are getting better. I mean, we're actually using our senses better with this higher technology, and we're going to demand that. We're going to demand those levels of performance.
So,
of course, the other piece of it, there are other
sorry.
sensory modalities, which include the tactile and the haptics side of things. That's probably
Which is very
going to be some
interesting.
of the toughest that need to be done. But there are ways to get there, and we don't necessarily we can fool. I don't like to use the word fool. We can disguise a lot of tactile inputs by using vibration and things like that, where you don't have to have actually forces to do it. And then, of course, there's olfactory and the olfactory side of it. I think it'll be a while before we get to taste and so forth. But still, there are another 1,000 PhD dissertations to be done out there in getting this, understanding exactly what's going on with the human and how to build this technology.
I thank you for this. I mean, I picked up one piece that was extremely interesting from what you just said, which is there are ways to deliver photons to the eye that do not require a headset.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the project you're working on right now?
Well, yes. I mean, this is one I've been actually working on for a while, and the real challenge is having mobility and doing that at the same time. If you're not if you can stay in one place, it's much easier to do this. I wish you could see the monitor I have right here in front of me. It's 49 inches wide. I mean, it's in this curved screen monitor that I'm looking at, and you guys are really big on it. And that is when I compare that to what I'm doing with my laptop, I just can't stand my laptop because there's not enough room there because I'm starting to retrain my peripheral vision. That's another thing. Another application of VR that I'm so excited about is to use it to train our senses. Turns out we have this incredible capability visually, acoustically, tactily, all of these senses we have. Incredible. But we're throwing it away through the media technology we have today. Now we use it when we go outdoors, when we go out in the woods and hiking and things like that. And but we aren't doing that as much as we used to anymore. So we're looking at screens. We're driving cars. We're having these little screens in our phones so because of that, if you don't use it, you lose it. And so we're losing our capability of being able to see using our peripheral vision. We don't have to use it for those saber-toothed tigers that would come eat us if we didn't see them, from the side. A football coach of the Washington Huskies, our football team, gridiron football team, here at the University of Washington, approached me this a few years ago saying, "Tom, can you help our quarterbacks to see? They can't see." What happens is, they're trying to throw a pass to a receiver out there, and there are the flankers coming in, these linebackers that are going to annihilate them, and they don't see them coming, and they aren't using their peripheral vision. Well, one of the things that we'll be able to do with VR is teach people to see again, and teach them to hear again, and to really refine this incredible capability we have. So it's not just book learning we need, it's how to use our senses and to appreciate what we already have, and that kind of thing. So I believe that there's lots of cool things that can come that enhance the human side of this equation.
Wonderful.
So Tom, one way I thought would be a really nice way of ending this out is because we've touched on, I guess, the past and the present and the future here. But I think there's something that I think what's really interesting about your experience and some things that you've even touched on here is I guess you've been riding the wave, right? In terms of the roller coaster on all of this stuff. So, we've identified things here in the future that I think is gonna, they're gonna be a while away and gonna wait. But I guess you've been through it all where, we've been in a situation where in the kind of the 80s, 90s, where you've had this technology and everyone's really excited about it. People are predicting that it's going to be the next big thing. And then I guess, you have this this lull of time that goes by before really anyone cares about the technology again, because technology has picked up. I guess I'd just love to hear from you, I guess, what it was like, during, I guess, that winter, because I even speak to people today where some people have told me, oh yeah, we've just been through the VR winter, where, it was a kind of like a 2-year, 3-year period between the Oculus Rift getting launched and kind of now. But I guess you've been through several winters, and
Yes.
I'm interested to know what your thoughts are on that, and then I guess how that might go moving forward as well.
Well, that's another great question, Daniel. Part of the winter, the few early winters, were filled because I was working for the Department of Defense. And so we were busy working away on the technology. We knew what problems we needed to solve. It was really clear. And so it meant that we just had to brute force getting solutions. And this was expensive. Even when we were working with these miniature cathode ray tubes, um, we had to come up with a whole new electro-optical design for that. Electron beam forming and electromagnetic deflection, and how do you drive these beams really fast, really hard beams? How to do the acceleration? How do you do the the shielding? Because when you go up to 15,000 volts, accelerating on these miniature cathode ray tubes, you generate X-rays, and
You
so
want to
you have
burn the
soft
radio.
X-ray. All these, and also when we were talking about putting this in an airplane. What happens if you have to eject with this stuff on? The wind blast and hits your helmet with all this paraphernalia on it. And we were really concerned about that problem. What would happen with a helmet and injuring a crew member? Furthermore, if you had this 15,000 volts into an inductive load that goes into the helmet, and then you pull the connector apart, you get an arc. You don't want to have an arc if you're trying to do a rapid egress on the ground where you have a lot of fuel that's around you and things like that. And so these little problems, well, they weren't little problems, they were big problems we had to deal with. And so we were busy doing that. Now, what of course, the winters really happened when we were trying to get it out of the military. And because we were in the military, we were beginning to see the advantages of this technology, bar none. With being able to aim systems and to be able to display information wherever you're looking, and see at night, and those kinds of things. But from the standpoint of a commercial or consumer applications, everybody was looking for the so-called killer application that would be the pull that was needed to get people excited. And part of the winter time, we were working on education. I felt all along that education was the killer application, but there is no money in education. That's part of the problem. And but we were doing these studies funded by NSF and other agencies, where we proved over and over and over again the remarkable effect of learning in VR, because it's like going on a field trip that you never forget. It's out there doing something, being somewhere, rather than just in a classroom. And so that was one of the things we were doing in terms of filling our time during this winter. Now, where did the money come from to do this? Well, it was difficult, because not only does the industry wax and wane, the government funding sources wax and wane. But the fact that we had this evidence helped us get the grants that we needed to keep that kind of research underway. But it's never going to happen ultimately until there is the pull that gets enough the economic interest in it to where companies are willing to invest in building the transportation mechanism, the medium. Now we're at the point where the medium is coming along, but you have to be able to sell it. The only way you're going to sell it is if you have content. And that's would be true with television. The only reason that people will buy a television, you can have the best television set in the world, but all you could do is watch Oprah all day long. I mean, that would have limitations. Nothing wrong with Oprah. Don't get me wrong about that. Oprah's wonderful. But the point is the content. And right now, to me, that's the big thing. That is the key. Is there's just things that you can do, things you can experience in VR you can't do any other way. That becomes the big attractor. It probably isn't going to be education, although ultimately that will be the biggest boon. It will be these worlds of wonder that you can experience no other way. And that will come when we have this army of creators who have the tools they need to make it happen. And up to this point in time, virtual worlds, aside from acquiring 360 videos of the real world, all of the worlds have been built using CAD. We're still using CAD, 2D, in order to build 3D. And we need to start building 3D within 3D. So what we need right now are the new tool sets that allow and empower these artists and these storytellers, these musicians, all these things to let us create the content. Then that whole store of content, the 100 channels or 800 channels we have on our TVs will happen so that people get a choice of what they're able to experience. Then we will have a really going concern. It'll take a while to get there. So surviving during the winter time, what keeps you going is your belief, because you know the power of it, and you can't not. I mean, you get addicted to this, and it's like you can't get it out of your head that this is the future, and this is transformative, way more transformative than what we've seen with any other media, telephone, television, whatever, movies. This is truly going to move minds in ways that none of that other is able to do. Now, it's not going to take the place of reading, because the beauty of reading is a whole new other way of building virtual worlds in your head. And we have to understand and appreciate that we just don't want this mind candy of VR to build the worlds in our heads. We want to read, because that process keeps our imagination alive too.
Through accessible insights, a solid network of support, and recognizing truly outstanding achievements near or far. Big or small, we're in this together. AIXR.